Okay, so hey guys, and welcome back to another weekly fighting roundup. And so if you're new around here and you haven't yet subscribed, please do so. Like video if you do indeed like video, and let's get straight into it. So of course, starting with the boxing news, and so Boxer has partnered with Betfred. Cameron has joined Queensbury, which was quite a surprise to be honest, but all credit to him. Everything he's kind of been through in his life, not just his boxing career, but his whole life, to be where he is now, where he's just probably made a lot of money out in Saudi, gone and got a bit of an upset, caused a bit of a stir, and now has been signed to Queensbury. It really has showed a lot, and it's really nice to see. And yeah, he's becoming a lot of a kind of fan favourite type of fighter because of that relatability type aspect, or you can see that he's gone through a lot, and he is just a kind of a working man in a working man's sport, and it shows that the sport isn't dead in that aspect, which is really nice to see. Gibb versus Slim, Pappy versus Kenny, Swingler versus Nick Lamau 2, Jarvis versus Williams, and Deji will fight November 28th. This is the Qatar Misfits card, which is a pretty good card to be honest. I mean, Gibb versus Slim, we already knew that fight was going to happen. It's a good fight, probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest one, in which Misfits can really make, because it seems like Jake Paul KSI probably isn't going to happen. Pappy versus Kenny is a nice matchup, and everybody used to be going around saying that Pappy could be a pro level type fighter. He isn't going to be at that point, but it's still a good fight, and to be fair, probably two of the more technical fighters in the Misfits scene. And Swingler versus Nick Lamau 2, I'm sure will be a banger like the first one. Jarvis versus Williams is another, a decent kind of fast hand, both trying to be slick type boxer. Still some fundamentals, not necessarily amazing, but still a good boxing match, and probably one of the best boxing matches in that kind of aspects on this card. And Deji, of course, whoever he ends up fighting. But yeah, it's a good card. It's a stacked card, and it's showing that there are some still big Misfits names available, even though KSI, of course, isn't about. Logan Paul isn't fighting, and so that shows that they still have big names available to them. Charlo is set to fight Lamana December 14th. Junior drew vs Kobayashi. Nasukawa won by unanimous decision versus Asilo to become WBO Asia Pacific Bantamweight Champion. Ola Skuga versus Gonzalez was a no contest. Cafu won via split decision versus Tanaka to become WBO World Super Flyweight Champion. Nakatani won via TKO in round 6 versus Chich Patana to remain WBC World Bantamweight Champion. And this feels like it was quite a long time ago, but it was the other big event that was put on by Top Rank in Japan, but on the back-to-back days, and it was on the Monday kind of lunchtime in the UK. And in general, it was another great show, and it was really nice to see both the shows in general. I think they were both high-quality shows, and I think they both showed a lot of talent, in which not all Japanese fighters had success, of course. Like I just mentioned, Cafu managed to get an upset win, but it showed a lot of talent in which was around in Japan, and big fights be made in the lower weight divisions. And to speak about a couple of the fights, I mean, Nasukawa, I think showed improvement and put on a kind of a good boxing display. I think his footwork is improving with every fight, and that was kind of the main thing that was needed to be improved from his kickboxing days. He still had that kickboxing type footwork style, and it wasn't really working out. But there's still a few things, like I think he still does load up and rely on certain shots a bit too much. But for the most part, like I say, I think he's improving. I don't think you can go put him into a world title shot, even though he's ranked very highly as of yet. But like I say, I think he's improving. Ola Skuga versus Gonzalez, that's a shame. I think it was probably going to be a really good fight. I was really excited for it. I did have Gonzalez winning, but Ola Skuga came on good in the early part, well, the whole fight. But yeah, of course, then it ended up being a no contest, and the cut looked like hardly a cut at all, to be honest. But do I think there'll be a rematch? Probably not. Gonzalez has kind of shown his reputation to not be the best to be working with, so I'm not too sure. We'll see. We'll have to wait and see if they'll get a rematch for that. Hopefully, I still believe that it still would make for a good fight stylistic wise. And then Cafu, like I say, a split decision versus Tanaka, in which he also, of course, scored a knockdown as well and put on a very good performance, a bit of a surprising performance. I mean, his coach Colin Nathan, we had on the channel a little while ago, and this was after the uh, Nonchinger win versus Correa. My apologies, and he showed how much of a great coach he is in that fight, and he bought a lot into Cafu. He was kind of saying the whole like, this guy's trying to take your mum's house away from you, and really motivating Cafu, and yeah, it seemed to work. Tanaka, defensive wise, again, just kind of not being able to be quite there against a puncher who is able to be comfortable on the back foot, and yeah, of course, got drops as well. If he wouldn't have got dropped, then he would have probably won, but nonetheless, perhaps we'll see a rematch, but for now, it's a real kind of great story. Cafu being able to get the win, him saying afterwards the whole world knows his name now, which is a really kind of nice thing to be seeing as well. And yeah, it's a big achievement for himself. And then Nakatani, another brilliant performance versus Chichpatana. I got the Cafu Tanaka one wrong. I got the Nakatani one right, and I think most people were saying that Nakatani would have gotten the win, and he did. And perhaps it took a couple rounds longer than which people were thinking, but nonetheless, it was a very measured performance again, yet again showing his levels above that of Chichpatana. I respect him for wanting to keep active and kind of nail off a few mandatories, but nonetheless, like I say, it was a comfortable win for him realistically, and now kind of sets up big fights around for him. I mean, Sumi, of course, got the win versus Inoue, so that could be a fight to be made. Of course, Inoue was meant to fight Nakatani, so Inoue still could. That being Takuma, Inoue still could. But I think Nakatani probably will have or will go for a unification next. We'll have to wait and see if he goes for the likes of like a Takai as a champion. We'll have to wait and see. If not, there's are huge fights there available in other weight divisions with the likes of like a Bam Rodriguez in the super flyweight division, or the likes of course, Naoya Inoue if he is able to catch him before he moves up into the featherweight division. So like I say, there are huge fights there, and I mean Nakatani versus Inoue would be the biggest fight in Japanese boxing probably ever. But it's just if we will see that, because if Inoue moves on to featherweight, then I just don't necessarily know if we'll see Nakatani be able to keep catching up in weight with him. But like I say, we'll have to wait and see. Moving on, the BBB OFC have ordered Kademi versus Dawood. Casemiro has been banned for a year, that after missing weight very badly from what I believe. Moran will fight McKenna December 7th. Bostan will fight October 26th. Davey will fight November 8th. IBF have ordered Inoue versus Goodman, so that was kind of already talked about being a fight made for I believe the 24th of December, but now the IBF has ordered it, so I think it's definitely going to happen next. Williams has retired. Akhmadaliev has filed a complaint against the IBF, so this is quite interesting. So the IBF obviously ordered Inoue versus Goodman, but I believe it was WBC or WBA ordered Akhmadaliev versus Inoue in the summertime, from what I remember. So it was a while ago, and Akhmadaliev has been kind of sat around waiting, and now the IBF have ordered Inoue versus Goodman. That seemed to kind of push Akhmadaliev aside fully. So, I don't think it's going to make a difference, this complaint, but I just find it kind of interesting that he has just been kind of pushed to the side a little bit, and I kind of doubt if we will ever actually see Akhmadaliev versus Inoue, because I think Inoue might actually move up after this next fight, but like I say, we'll have to wait and see. EA Sports have put a new fight night back on the table. So, of course, Undisputed has been released, and it's been popular, to be fair, and a lot of people have been uh, raving about it and saying good things about it, and it's kind of made EA want to bring back Fight Night. And maybe it's bad that it's taken this just to be able to actually even make them consider it, but nonetheless they're talking about it. Tudsbury has joined Matchroom. Valdez versus Navarrete 2, Espinoza versus Ramirez 2, Delgado, Torres Jr. and Vargas will fight December 7th. I think in general that's a very good card with some great fights on it. So Top Rank showing some of their talent there. Bivol's team have filed a protest against all sanctioning bodies, basically saying that they deserve the rematch, and is basically just protested against each and every single mandatory body for them to order the rematch. But the IBF, I believe, have ordered Beterbiev to fight against, I can't remember the name of who he's been ordered to fight against, but I think they've ordered somebody else to fight Beterbiev, and then they might strip him, similar to what they've just done versus Usyk, which I think is pointless. Why do they keep doing this? And it's just basically stopping any fighter from ever becoming undisputed, because they keep doing this. They kind of see what's going on in the division, and I don't know why they keep trying to get involved like this. But yeah, it's weird. For now, Bivol has ordered it for everyone, but like I said, we'll have to wait and see what the IBF actually decide to do. Moving on, Rigondeaux will fight Baluta November 12th. Valenzuela is no longer working with Team Benavides. Price has joined Misfits Boxing, and that was a bit of a surprising one, to be fair. Dylan Price, which I've interviewed a little while ago on this channel, just suddenly got announced that he was fighting for Misfits in these Misfits Pro fights. So yeah, like I say, it's interesting to see how his career carries on progressing off of that. Carrington will fight Coolwell November 15th. Miller has said he will fight Shizor in January, and I don't think that's a bad fight, to be honest. Herzeni won via points versus Maycock. Farrington won via TKO in round 2 versus Lobeto. El Masi won via KO in round 2 versus Nustes. King won via points versus Prot Kunas. Barney Smith won via KO in round 2 versus Ryo. Volokovs won via points versus Fletcher. Webb won via TKO round 8 versus Bennett to become Southern Area heavyweight champion. Gilly won by TKO in round 4 versus McGann to remain Commonwealth Super Welterweight champion. And this card was a nice kind of Friday night Queensbury show, in which they've been quite consistent putting on. Another Your Call one, which I always like to see. It's Sam Gilly headlining and making his first fight for Queensbury Promotions. But a couple of other fights. Bonnie Smith, a nice solid body shot KO. I would like to see him moved on a bit now. I think he has been in these lower ranks for a little while now. And then Fletcher got completely just beaten up versus Volkovs. I think he maybe overlooked him a lot. I don't necessarily know, but he looked poor when he was put under pressure, and he looked like he was struggling a lot. And I don't know, it just didn't look like the Fletcher in which we had seen in previous fights. But perhaps it was a step up a bit too fast. But yeah, like I said, I think he did look quite poor. Webb, that was a nice, stoppage versus Bennett. Bennett did very well to be standing for as long as he was, but Webb, after his timeout, and I'm sure he didn't really think he'd be able to get back to this level. But in the end, it's a nice story to see him be able to become that Southern Area title champion. And these fights, perhaps a lot of fighters that are put on big platforms are pushed past kind of the area level quite quickly, but it's still an important level, and it still makes for great fights, and it's still every fighter that fights for them, it knows how important they are, and they know how important the belt is, and they are. That's what I'm saying. That's what makes the good fights, because they're so eager to put on this show, because it is such an important title to them. And I think that was another showing of a great area title fight. And then Gilly as well, and a great performance again. McGann, I did feel bad for him. He showed a lot of toughness in there, taking it on short notice as well. But Gilly was accurate in his work, demolished him realistically. I think he will still go on to fight Green next, but yeah, it was a destructive performance realistically from him, and probably his best performance yet, which was, like I say, when you're headlining your first Queensbury show, and it's your first time, I believe, headlining, you have to put on a show, and he definitely did that. Moving on, Boxer have partnered with Riyadh Season, so that's kind of officially made it official that they are going to be working together for the long term. IBF have ordered Optai versus Sin Cara. Dubois has called out Harper. Lopez won via KO in round 3 versus Ockles. Navarro won via unanimous decision versus Gamble. Adenebat won via unanimous decision versus Saya. Salisto won via TKO round 9 versus Colbert. Hickey won via points versus Mosquera. Ramos won via points versus Courtney. Hennessy won via points versus Moraes to become WBA Intercontinental Super Bantamweight champion. TKV won via TKO in round 6 versus Ignatius. Yard won via points versus Vilkans. Edmondson won by majority decision versus Aziz to become British and Commonwealth light heavyweight champion. Bengay won by unanimous decision versus McKinson to become IBO World Welterweight champion. And Zim won by a KO at round 8 versus Davies. And to speak about this show, which was another good British boxing show, and had some, interesting kind of headlines coming out of it. And I mean, TKV versus Ignatius was a poor fight. Ignatius literally just sat in the corner the entire fight. I've interviewed him, and I don't want to be saying this, but it was poor from him. He pretty much did nothing except from just sit in the corner, and clench, and it was a messy fight. TKV didn't really make the most of, I think, an opponent who was kind of just there to be sit there and hit, but eventually did get him out of there. Yarde really wasn't the best performance from Yard. Like, he got the knockdown early, and perhaps, like he said, that was a bad thing because it made him too confident. But I think he was very stiff in there. I think he wasn't really. I don't know. Maybe he was just going for singular shots too much. He was just kind of walking forward, looked a bit just uninterested a lot of the time, and Vilkans was having a lot more success than a lot of people thought. And you see it happen a lot with fighters who are thinking about fights ahead, that they just don't want to. They just don't necessarily care as much about the fight they're in currently, and that they lose rounds and things like that, and they just kind of scrape decisions. I mean, if you think about Boatsi versus Stepien, I'm not saying that was quite as close of an affair, but Boatsi looked poor and didn't really do too much, and that was a fight just before um, that fight versus Aziz. So like, it's the same thing. So Boatsi, if he's saying that he would have made easy work of Vilkams, then why didn't he make easy work of Stepien at that time when he was fighting him? It's the same kind of thing in my opinion. And yeah, it was just poor and just kind of uninteresting, to be honest. Edmondson, that majority versus Aziz was weird. I mean, I didn't personally think that Edmondson deserved to win, or did enough to win. I thought Aziz did do enough, but it was a messy fight. Aziz again showing that he has the good kind of inbounce jab, but his footwork in close is poor, getting in close is poor. Edmondson kind of just kept doing the same thing and just kept circling around the same way and just popping out the jab every so often, and looked like a very one-dimensional type fighter as well. So in general, it wasn't really an amazing type fight. I don't think either of them are going to get to a world level, but Aziz's career possibly might be over after this. And Boxer have invested a lot of time into him and have pushed him. And of course, he had that fight versus Boatsi, and even then they've tried to rebuild him here. But after that, unless they make the rematch, that might be the end of an Aziz kind of career, to be honest. And this was when he was right on the brink of claiming that British title outright. And Mbenge was quite a surprising win versus McKinson. I got my prediction wrong. I thought McKinson would be able to kind of keep him moving and utilise the fact of how big he is, because he would not be able to move as well as McKinson. But then McKinson just kind of did get drawn into a fight, was trying to think he was some power puncher and then load up on his punches quite a lot, and wasn't really throwing in these quick, fast flurries in which he can. But Mbenge was good coming forwards, was continuously coming forwards, and was able to find shots at angles in which perhaps I didn't expect, and perhaps was able to work inside better than I thought. And in the end, it definitely did deserve the win, so I'm glad that he got the win. And then Azim was punch perfect performance versus Davies. I mean, I thought perhaps he would have been able to get him out of there earlier, and Davies perhaps showed a bit more toughness than which I thought, but Azim did beautiful work, very much found his range, and that made Davies look silly at times because he didn't get into exchanges. He found his range just outside of range and was able to pretty much counteract anything in which Davies came with. Credit to Davies for staying in for as long as he was, but that was a very, very good shutout performance from Azim. It was interesting to see how Davies was wanting to get in the limelight as much as he was throughout his retirement speech, but a very good career, and of course now he's retired. But Azim, we'd like to see him go on to the Dalton Smith fight next. That's pretty much what everybody's talking about. Maybe the Harlem Eubank one as well, but yeah, I think we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. Probably he will be on a Riyadh season show next, but for now that was a very good performance from him, and getting him ready for that kind of Riyadh season scene in which, like I said in my prediction, I think Boxer is needing to really push and invest into certain their fighters to be able to get to that level, because a couple of them as of recent have been showing up a little bit, but I think Azim is able to do that. Moving on, Pauls could fight Conway November 30th. Plantic will fight Blasio November 8th. McCarthy will rematch McCormack December 7th. Lefebvre won by a technical decision versus Basualdo to become WBA Super Bantamweight World Champion. I didn't do a prediction for this one, but it was great to see Lefebvre be able to return to being the World Champion. Russell won by a KO round 4 versus Bernias. Villoria won via TKO round 7 versus Olaguin. Perro won via TKO round 3 versus Jake Jr. Tellers won via TKO round 7 versus Gonzalez. Tapia drew versus Saavedra. Murtazaliev won via TKO round 3 versus Zhu to remain IBF World Super Welterweight Champion. And a surprising card. I'm going to speak about a couple of the fights now. And Tellez put out a good performance versus Gonzalez and was kind of the leading prospect and the leading Australian name that actually managed to do well in this one, to be honest. But Tapia did well to get a draw. To be fair, I mean he timed a beautiful right hand on Saavedra, but before that he was getting rocked a lot and was getting thrown about a lot, and I didn't think Saavedra would be able to do that to Tapia. That's what I kind of predicted, that Tapia would be able to win, because I didn't think, like I say, Saavedra would be able to move about and have such a big effect as what he had, but he definitely did. And Tapia, like I say, landed that right hand, and that definitely did change things a bit. And if he didn't have landed that, then he probably would have lost. But nonetheless, it was a very entertaining fight going into the later rounds as well. They were all just kind of throwing everything towards it, and I thought perhaps the stars would gel and it would make that entertaining fight. But yeah, it was an interesting contest, an entertaining one, definitely one that I would like to see again. And then Murtazaliev versus Zhu was a big surprise. That caught pretty much everybody off guard. I think everybody was expecting Zhu to be able to win, and of course, after the Fundora fight, he was credited so much for his toughness, for his gameness, for his ability to be able to kind of dig deep and keep coming forwards, and his warrior type spirit. And Murtazaliev just completely shut him out of that. I mean, Zhu was stood in range a lot of the time, and Murtazaliev was continuously having success from from the very start, and dropped him, I believe, 5 times. And after the first time dropped him, he did look like he didn't really know what to do. Zhu, I think Zhu just thought he would be able to walk through him. Perhaps was way too overconfident, and Metazaliev was able to pick his shots nicely, even if it was in certain messy exchanges, but completely showed Zhu up, and like I say, that toughness kind of came back to bite him. And yeah, now it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Zhu, because of course he was talking about Crawford fights, he was talking about Spence Jr. fights, he was talking about the rematch with Fundora, all these big fights. He was a big name on PBC, and he was really pushed by them after working hard to get in a position to be pushed by them. And now he's definitely been set back a lot. And yeah, not too sure what could be next for Zhu in his career, but Murtazaliev showed a lot, and perhaps could be a bit of an interesting name in the super welterweight division now. That was a good, strong performance from him, and yeah, possibly we see him going against the winner of like a Fundora versus Spence Jr. I'm not too sure, but I'm sure PBC will probably be wanting to get him promoting and get pushing him now, I suppose. Moving on, School won by unanimous decision versus Shishkin to remain IBF World Super Middleweight Champion, and yeah, that was quite a boring fight, to be honest. I mean, I got the prediction right, and John Annex, no, not him. Somebody on Twitter was really going for it and just saying that it was one of the worst IBF world title fights ever, one of the worst world title fights ever, and yeah, it really wasn't the best. Skull's going to be defensive, but Shishkin's couldn't really do anything, and yeah, it probably shows that he shouldn't have been a world level type fight, maybe. But nonetheless, he earned himself that position to be in that position. I don't think that's warranted a Canelo fight after that, but perhaps other feeder names will be eager to go after him, because now he's got this world title, and it could be to create a big fight now. Of course, the Pacheco and Mbili, Munguia, they're all big fighters, and they could all get probably bigger paydays if they were to win this IBF belt, and they can probably see Skull as a bit of an easier type fight. So they're definitely going to be eager to do that. Perhaps that might not go in their favour. We've just seen, of course, Zoo get caught trying to go for the easier type world title fight, but Skull's not really that kind of powerful puncher. So yeah, on paper, every big name in that kind of lower part of the super middleweight division is going to really push for a Skull fight next. Singh versus Lima and Hagyat Zhu will fight the December 12th. And then that's all the boxing news. Moving on now to the MMA news. Cerrone is coming out of retirement. He says it's pretty much just to do with numbers, and so that could be the making of some interesting fights. It was funny how he literally just admitted that he was on steroids. Everybody was on steroids at that time, as Nick Diaz says. But yeah, that was quite funny. But yeah, he seems to want to come out of retirement, and perhaps a Tony Ferguson fight could be a fun fight to be made there. Moving on, Brown versus Battle, Suarez versus Jean Deroba. Guida versus Hooper, Chiesa versus Griffin, Durden versus Van, and Texera versus Bersecki will fight December 7th. Edwards won via submission in round 3 versus Vidal. Matsumoto won via decision versus Katona. Alat Mabayev won via decision versus Nicolau. Smotherman won via decision versus Hadley. Johnson won via decision versus Medarij. Font won via decision versus Phillips. Hernandez won via TKO in round 5 versus Pereira. And to speak about, alright UFC fight night show, it wasn't, a big one or anything like that, but, it had a couple decent fights in it, and I think that if I'm looking through, I think that the Font win, it was a good, nice win for him, and I suppose, other than that, the Font win was a good win. The Ahmed Bayer fight was a good fight, and like I said, there was a couple decent fights on there, but the Hernandez Pereira one was interesting. I thought Pereira perhaps would have been able to have more success. Of course, he's known for these kind of extravagant punches or just exchanges in which he will throw, and you never really know what to expect from him. But he's definitely a 3 round type fighter. He struggled going into later rounds, and Hernandez perhaps wasn't really doing much, just was continuously taking him down over and over again, and that's all he had to do. And then Pereira just looked absolutely knackered and looked like he couldn't really deal with it, and that shows the difference between like a world level and not quite there yet. And Pereira, I don't necessarily think he ever will be there. But it was a good performance from Hernandez nonetheless. Moving on, Hughes won by decision versus McKee. Monsen won by decision versus Kadir Mogomayev. Eblin won by decision versus Edwards to remain Bellator middleweight world champion. Cyborg won by decision versus Pacheco to become PFL women's featherweight world champion. And Ngannou won by KO in round 1 versus Ferreira to become PFL heavyweight world champion. And to speak about a couple of the fights, Eblin versus Edwards perhaps wasn't the most entertaining of displays, but Eblin, I got my prediction right, was kind of that force a bit too much for Edwards. Edwards has nice counters, but isn't physically able to deal with the wrestling or the strength in which Eblin can put on. And, Eblin, I don't think is an amazing type fighter. I don't think he could go into the UFC and have the same kind of level of success, but that's still a good kind of win for him. And, like I say, good performance in a rematch where I don't necessarily know if we needed to see a rematch, but nonetheless, of course, we did. Cyborg versus Pacheco was a great fight, to be honest. Cyborg hurt Pacheco early, and Pacheco did well to survive and carry on, and then Pacheco had success versus Cyborg at times. But Cyborg, even at 39 years of age, was able to be too much for Pacheco and become, of course, a fifth organisation world champion, which is a great achievement from herself, and another very good performance, which again she shows that power again. Credit to Pacheco to be able to stay in and deal with that and have success, like I say, at certain times herself. But yeah, inevitably Cyborg again, even at 39 years of age, is still able to have so much success, and then it's really showed at wrestling as well. And perhaps after being in boxing, have a success there, you wouldn't have thought maybe she would have wanted to go straight to wrestling, but straight away she was on it and able to have, like I say, a lot of success from it. And where she would go next, nobody really has a clue, to be completely honest. Same with Ngannou as well, but it was a great stoppage win versus Ferreira. Like I say, I got my prediction right, same as I did for the Cyborg one, same as I did for the Eblin one. Ngannou, I said if he will try and get him to the ground in the first round. I said Ferreira will have one punch, one chance to land on him, like he did versus Bader. And if he misses that, then he's going to probably get tapped out, because I didn't think his ground game would be good enough. His ground game has improved, and he was going for a submission, and he almost had a bit of success with it and actually was attempting it, which was like I say, a bit better than what we have seen from him in the past. But inevitably, he just gave up his back very easily, and Ngannou just flattened him out continuously, was beating him. The ref definitely should have jumped in earlier, but that was a destructive performance, and I don't think anybody would have been able to get in the way of that. Francis Ngannou, the post-fight speech shows how much this fight meant to him, and yeah, like I said, I don't think anything would have been able to get in the way of him. But of course, we don't necessarily know what's going to happen with him now and where he can even go next. But that's definitely put more hype back on him and more eyes back on him, and yeah, it was a very big statement performance from himself. But yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you did enjoy. Like the video if you didn't, like the video, subscribe if you're new, and thanks for watching.